All right, maybe before we start, maybe show of hands of people who have used Toaster or have heard of Toaster in the past. Okay, great. That's definitely pleasing. Nice. Just to quickly introduce myself again, I'm Mohammed, working as a web developer at Savoir-Faire Linux. Again, thank you for joining the presentation on Yocto project development with Toaster. Specifically, I want to emphasize this presentation on how to simplify the learning curve for new developers joining the Yocto project. I think I've given you already a context of SFL. We're a silver member of the Yocto project, as well as the Linux Foundation. We have, as I mentioned, a large expertise into this domain. We are well focused to provide contributions to the open source communities. I think we take that very seriously at SFL. So definitely when the project for Toaster came up, definitely the web team came to us and said, we want to do this in terms of maintaining the project, getting the auto builder integrated, having automated tests run for Toaster on the auto builder, and also having the Django application well maintained as a whole. So I think we took this challenge definitely quite seriously on our side. I want to thank you, Tim, at least at the start of the project, for your help. I know the team definitely enjoyed your feedback.
4 years of reading, only one testing it, so I'm very happy to have that.
Yeah. And we definitely can't forget about Richard Purdy, who was our main point of contact for this project. I know he's not very available sometimes for feedback, but he definitely took a lot of time out of his day-to-day to give us feedback and answer any questions that we had. So definitely thanks, Richard. So for some background, as a rationale for some Yocto project may pose as a steep learning curve. I know for me, from a personal experience, definitely going into something into the embedded world was definitely new. So definitely Toaster can definitely be a tool, not just for developers, but also engineers, project managers who work with the embedded systems, a tool of interface that can provide visual guidance, visual feedback, specifically using BitBake. So what is Toaster? Just to give you a quick run through, Toaster is a web interface that can be used to configure and run the Yocto project, specifically to build activities. It also makes things simpler for those of you which are new and not used to the Linux command line interactions with the machine. And just to give you an example, under the hood of Toaster, Toaster communicates with two parts of the Yocto project, namely BitBake and Pokey. And this helps us to build systems to fetch information about builds, packages, images, and many more. So as you see in the example on the right, Toaster can have a real-time representation of existing builds running on your machine. So as you can see, we can have builds that are pending, builds that are succeeded, and builds that have failed. So it's a nice UI interface that provides dashboard actions that provides much more verbose data for an end user. So let's take a look at some of the key challenges that many of us face on a daily basis. Some of us may not relate to this, but I definitely did. So I think it's nice to mention these. For example, for those who are not familiar with the syntax, structure of configuration files, people who are manually editing these files without a graphical interface can definitely be daunting at first. So as we see on the example on the right, we have a local conf file with a list of configuration files. We can even work with, let's say, BB layers configuration files or distro configuration files. So definitely someone who's starting out, the complexity of configuration files can definitely be a challenge. Another challenge is build customization. As we know, Yocto builds involve selecting software packages, setting configuration options, adjusting build parameters. So again, without a user-friendly interface, developers need to navigate through extensive documentations. This definitely requires a lot of time to manually edit configuration files. At least I would say from my experience, I would say this definitely creates a likelihood for errors, most likely for customized builds. So Toaster definitely provides a way to monitor these processes. As we're customizing builds, we also have a challenge to have some kind of feedback of monitoring these builds. So I know a lot of developers rely solely on command line tools, and they need to constantly switch between terminals and parse verbose output specifically to diagnose a build that has some issues. So monitoring the progress of builds and identifying the errors without a graphical interface, specifically for a real-time build, can be challenging. As we are aware, Yocto also allows us to work with multiple layers to organize recipes, configurations. Again, managing layers manually without a GUI can be error-prone, specifically for adding or removing layers and ensuring their dependencies are resolved correctly. Definitely a challenge. Next, dependency management. How is this challenging? We know that Yocto's dependency management systems needs to ensure all required components are included in the final build. So tracking, resolving dependencies manually can be time-consuming. I think, Tim, you definitely raised that concern. So having a visual aid provided by Toaster, as we have gone through some of the challenges, let's take a look at in depth maybe some of the solutions as I've explained briefly, more in detail. First, Toaster provides a centralized platform for managing Yocto projects. Users can create, modify, and monitor these configuration layers, their builds. As we see on the image on the right, we have a dashboard listing all the projects on our machine. Users can navigate easily using the dashboard. We also provide filtering, sort, and tree explorer-like mechanics. So there's definitely an emphasis on user experience. Next, Toaster has an access to the event logs. So build monitoring is essential. Having access to these event logs allows Toaster to monitor the progress of the build in real time. A new feature we added to Toaster recently is that even if you have builds that have been built without Toaster being run in parallel, you can import these builds and still have access to the data. So to look a bit more deeper into this, as prior we saw a list of all the builds. Now let's see what was built. We see information about bit tasks that were executed and reused during our build. Included those that used a shared state. We can see the dependency relationships between recipes, packages, and tasks. A neat thing about this also is we also have performance information of build time, the amount of time it took a task to run or execute, the CPU consumption on your machine, and the disk I/O consumption. So this is an example of a detailed view for a task. We can see in seconds the amount of time it took for a task to execute. Again, with another measurement of metrics, we can see the CPU usage for the execution of a task. Again, this data is saved into a web application database. Therefore, you have access to these metrics as long as you have an instance of Toaster on your machine. So definitely for references or feedback, or even going back and see if there has been in terms of scaling, this definitely provides a nice metrics to your tool. As we can see on this image on the right, Toaster also allows us to see the value of all our variables in our build configuration. This is definitely neat because our files are coming from different paths. So to be able to see all the big variables associated to our project in a singular place is definitely neat. Toaster also provides layer management to your project. We have quick to access buttons to remove layers from a project. Again, this can also be done through the terminal, but if someone wants to do it through the interface, they have access to this feature. You can also browse through published layers in the Open Embedded Layer Index that are available for you. You can also select the version of your build system, or you can simply also import layers from the Git repository or even your local directory directly to Toaster. So the goal about this is to import your own layers for building, which provides a nice flexibility. Toaster also provides visual representation of dependencies between components in the Yocto build system. As we see on the image on the right, we can select different packages for our build. An option to select multiple recipes like APT or Core Image Minimal through the interface. And something neat that I really like to use is the possibility to go back and forth between errors and warnings raised in builds, especially in builds that you maybe have built a few weeks ago, a few years ago. So if you still have access to that database, you have access to this data. As I mentioned earlier, Toaster is now functional with the auto builder. Yes. I think this was definitely a nice milestone for the team. Why this is so great? Because it provides a crucial component for automating builds and test processes within the Yocto project ecosystem. We know already how complex embedded projects can be as they grow. There needs to be some sense of efficient build automation, and I believe Toaster being integrated with the auto builder provides that. Also, as we can see here, Toaster is being tested across different development environments to ensure that it's consistent, reliable, and scalable. So we're able to test if Toaster bit-bake under the hood can run on different Python versions, for example. So talking about automated testing, we use the framework called Selenium to provide automated testing. We have over 150 tests that are integrated into Toaster. We try to replicate every single click in the application. We can definitely add more, or we could do better for sure. But I think as a first step, I think this was a nice milestone to achieve. So what's next for Toaster? I think the biggest question I get from users, especially power users, is why switch to the GUI? What does Toaster bring to me that bit-bake terminal does already? How can we perhaps maybe raise awareness for users to use Toaster and provide feedback to us? I think that's definitely something I spoke with Richard about in our discussions, is how to create some level of awareness for Toaster and how we can integrate that in our existing workflows.
Maybe we can add it to VS Code.
Yes, so channeling on that, with the VS Code team, we are now able to start and stop Toaster via the VS Code commands. So you don't need to have a bit-bake pre-installed into your machine. You can run it from scratch. This is a first step to this integration. Maybe you want to incorporate some kind of medium. I think this is an open question to many of us. But I think we can use this platform today at least to create some kind of a starting point for discussion. Thank you.